All right, how are y'all feeling this afternoon so far? Come on, everyone, wake up. I know you just had food. Yes, exactly. For those of you in the back, there is overflow space over the theaters, over that direction. If you want an actual chair, we have it streaming over there. All right, so now next, for our next speaker, before we get into it, I have a question again for you all. Are we actually headed toward a fully autonomous future of agents? Or do we think there will always be humans in the loop? What do you think? Keep that in your head, all right? Because I think that we know that the industry is racing toward one direction, right? But production reality keeps pulling us back. Our next luminary talk is going to dig into exactly that tension, right? What it takes to get production grade confidence and whether full autonomy is even the right goal to be working toward. So please join me in welcoming Joe Moura, CEO and co-founder of CrewAI.
Hey there, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Come on, you can do better than that. I know that's post-lunch. How you doing today? All right, I want to try one more time. How are we doing today? Damn, I like it. It's Dev Day, it's Snowflake. This is looking good, like it's packed. I'm so excited to be here. I got to say, there's a lot going on, but it's all exciting stuff. I'm going to talk about a few horror stories in the process here, but I think it's going to be fun, and we're going to have a lot of laughs along the way. So, very excited. I want to start with one thing that I think everyone in this room agrees, because you're probably hearing about it nonstop for the last year and a half at least. And that is AI agents are valuable. But they're only valuable if they actually run in production. And I think like we all have been hearing about like, oh, AI agents, like everyone's building and everyone's running so many agents. I find it funny sometimes when people say like, wow, I have like 300 agents doing things for me. I was like, but how does that actually work? Like how you get 300, how you manage that? So it's interesting to think about the fact that we want to get these agents moving. We want to get these agents adopted. We know that they need to hit production to be successful. And building is getting easier and easier. But at the same point, I'm not seeing the agents getting into production as fast as building is getting easier. So my whole point is why we are, despite of agreeing on this, building and designing agents in a way that guarantees that they don't get to production. And that will be today's talk. It's going to be a little bit of a paradox, but I think it's going to be an interesting journey. And I'm going to talk about one specific agent that we have inside our company and kind of like how that went south for a hot second. Well, first thing is I want to think about the agentic development life cycle, right? So if I had to plot the effort that goes into building an agent, and let's say that I'm going to be very naive and I'm going to say, well, it's literally like 1/3 in the building, 1/3 in the deployment-ish, another 1/3 on the scaling, right? And let's say that that's virtually how much effort like I will put into actually getting these things out of the ground. The fun thing is the second that you say, as a company, as an individual, as a team, I'm gonna build an agent, congratulations, your ROI at that point is negative. We're getting no value from that, right? And you only will get value once these cases go after a certain scale. All the way to that point, you're losing money. Until you got like agents live, agents running, there is enough kind of like things going, enough throughput through it to justify that existence. There was absolutely no point on building it there, right? And it's interesting because again, there is this narrative now about building is getting commoditized. Like, oh, you can kind of like wish things into existence, right? There's like there's Cloud Code, there's Cursor, there's Codex. And by the way, I do wanna do this. Sorry about it, but I want to make sure that we're playing with each other here. How many of you use Codex? Raise your hands. How many of you uses Cursor? How many of you uses Cloud Code? Damn, all right. All right, no clue why they're making so much money, right? But there you go. Like you're feeling it, right? You're feeling it in your fingers as engineers. Like I can prompt these things into existence now. Now, my ask is, if you believe that you're building more and building faster, raise your hand. Keep your hand up if you think that you're building 10 times faster. Now, keep your hand up if you think that you're shipping 10 times more. Yeah, there we go. That is what I expect. A lot less hands in there. So there's some disconnection in there about this story and this idea of building getting easier and easier. Meanwhile, a bunch of blockers coming up along the way, right? And these blockers are going to be all sorts of things. There's a few things that are kind of like the obvious culprits, right? You think about security. You think about like a role-based level of access. You're thinking about all those different things. And now, because agents are non-deterministic systems, you have also new things. You have like LLM as a judge, you have evols, you have all these new things that need to think, and now tokens, right? Everyone's hearing about like tokens are getting expensive. For a hot second, we thought that it would be a runaway to the bottom, but actually it seems like now LLMs are getting more expensive, especially on the top core like winning models. So there's a lot more considerations that are being put into kind of like the stage during that process of deploying and scaling these agents. Now, there is a big problem with like this concept of the things that are getting in the way. And in the end of the day, the more that I think about it, the more it seems that they all go back to a conundrum, a paradox. And the paradox is agents are natively autonomous. That's part of the benefit. Otherwise, you can just do if analysis, right? Autonomy, though, requires trust. So you got to trust that this thing is going to work. The problem is that trust requires you to have control of what is happening. But the problem then is that control kills autonomy. And that is kind of like the vendor lock. That's kind of like the locking that you get in there. And you're like, all right, so I want to control this. So it's funny because you view the systems to be extremely kind of like a probabilistic, and then you're now start to adding a bunch of deterministic controls, and like then you say like, well, the system kind of sucks because not giving the same answer every time. I was like, well, then maybe it was not supposed to be an agent. But there is a broader conversation here about what is actually happening and how you get these agents into production. And that's a little bit of kind of like what I want to talk about today. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because of a company called CrewAI. Now it's going to be either embarrassing or very exciting. So how many of you have heard and know CrewAI? All right. Enough hands for me to not be embarrassed. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So we started as an open source code, right? So it's like an open source framework for people to build AI agents. We get around like 16 to 20 million downloads a month and process around 300 to 500 million agents a month. What is exciting because we got to see a lot of what's happening out there. And if you wonder like, well, who is running all these agents? Most of the Fortune 500 out there. So this is like certain companies and how many individual engineers they have using CrewAI open source in there. My point with this is we have seen a little bit of the good, the ugly, and the bad, and everything that goes along the way. And I want to talk about some of those. First thing is not all agentic systems are equal. There are some agentic systems that are completely different, and I think the term got very loaded throughout kind of like the years and months. So there is a few that are very kind of like probabilistic, and you're really kind of like using all the agency. You have agents talking to each other, delegating work into each other, and everything in between. And in our world, we call them crews, right? These agents have tools, MCPs are not. They have LLMs powering them. They have memory. Kind of like everyone got the gist of that. And on the other side, we also see many automations that are kind of like full-blown deterministics, right? We call them like flows. It's basically, if this, then that. We're very used to that. The reality is, most of the use cases that we see out there that go to production, they're not on the extreme sides of the spectrum. They're usually somewhere in between. So it's a mix of having certain pieces that are extreme deterministic. For example, I want to pull certain data from Salesforce. I don't want to burn tokens on that. It's an API call. I'm just going to make that API call myself. But then now that I have this data, I want to make a decision on that, or maybe I want to parse it. Well, then I also don't need the agent, but I could use a function calling. So maybe I would use just an LLM call in there. But now I have this data. I want to launch a deep research. Well, at this point, I actually want a crew. I want a many agents that are going to go around and research the web and scrape sites and all that. These are actually the most common type of use cases that we're seeing. So first thing that I want to talk about is this idea that a lot of these agentic systems are not necessarily going to be only agents and only wrapping LLMs and making calls and having memory. They're going to have some components are being deterministic in a way and different levels of agency between like one single LLM call and one single agent to an entire group or cluster of agents working together. A good example, just to put like this in the real world, what would be a use case like this? And this is a very usual use case. Most of you probably have seen this. Imagine that like it's a conversational use case. So, hey, I'm just gonna send a message into this. And we can think about this being like, I don't know, it can be a CFO, it can be a customer or user, whatever it might be. At that initial point that you're getting that message, you don't need to have any agents. You just want to understand, does this message requires me to trigger something deeper, a research or something else? If not, I can just answer it right away. But if I actually want to like have an entire research kind of like group of agents go about it, maybe you want to do some clarification questions, and that's going to be just another LLM call. But then you might want to create a plan, and then after executing this plan, you might want to have many agents. So you can see that all those different pieces come together in different stages. And that has been kind of like a little bit of the shape of what we're seeing when these use cases hit production. So the paradox that we see is that the more autonomous you're trying to get your agents to be, in the end of the day, the more humans you end up getting involved. But I think a lot of people have been talking historically about humans in the loop as this idea of like, well, I want humans to help me get 100%, right? I want humans to kind of like close that gap that the agents kind of like will screw up for whatever reason. So I want agents to basically step in. But we actually found out that if you bring these humans not in the loop during the execution, but during the design time, is where you can squash a lot of these problems instead of like trying to basically plug holes down the road. So here's what I mean. Like we had this one agent that we roll out internally. And this is something that I'm as a CEO and engineer, I was like, you know what? I don't want to bother my engineering team. They're very focused right now. I'm going to just wing this. I have my cloud code. I have my agents. I will build this best coding agent that we could for our company. And I went into this rabbit hole. I create this agent and I put it out there. And I was very excited about it. I was like, folks, meet Iris. Is your company shared agent. And I gave this like LinkedIn, like not this Slack post message about it. And it was very excited. And I mean, most of you are engineers. So you know what is the first thing that my team tried to do? Break it. They're like, well, try to send an email, bypassing as Joe, sending to someone else. And it's like, what you're doing? I'm trying to help us. And funny enough, of course, everyone in the company engaged on that, right? And that creates an entire thread. And like everyone wants to try to break in different ways and see if we could leak any secrets and whatever that would be. And it's funny because it took me a while because I did a lot of this in isolation. I built this agent myself, and I create the ability to bring humans in the loop thinking like, wow, I'm going to deploy this, it's going to just work out. And eventually it did. Eventually I had to bring this back in the drawing board. I had to pull some of like different people from the team that was even beyond engineering to understand more of the needs. But then you start to see our VP of product, Jesse Miller, for example, is coming out now and asking like, hey, can you actually change this copy on the website because this is wrong? Or even our designer, Helen, saying like, hey, there's a bunch of hard-coded callers and I'm trying to create a design system. Can you actually collapse all those into one single place so I can actually change them and all that? And then it's funny because then engineers starts to get like to notice. They start to see like, damn, Helen that doesn't even know how to code nor has access to GitHub, is open PRs and now saying like, hey, I guess like CI/CD pass, can anyone merge my PR? And now like you have engineers like Vinny realizing like, well, Helling's on steroids, I guess, and we really need to handle with that. The way that we actually got it to flip it around, the way that we got it go from something that initially people were not engaging, when people were trying to use was not necessarily working, was by bringing humans on the loop, but not necessarily on the loop during the execution. Was actually bringing like the humans early in the process. So instead of like your usual, like, well, if something goes wrong, ping whatever person, they will help you bridge the gap. We're like, well, no, let's bring these humans like all the way into the back. Like, let's bring as much of what we can about the design, about the logic, about the security, all the way to the left so that we can start that out of the gate. And that actually triggered us to do a bunch of like interesting things because one, these people were they're very experienced in their domain. So Helen knew exactly what she needed for design. My support team did exactly what kind of questions they would get recurrently, and that would help us kind of like create and cover these use cases. Two, it made us actually have to implement some enforcements. We realized that if you just make this agent give an answer to like someone that works in a support team the same way that they would for an engineering team, that actually creates problems because support basically copy and paste this to a user or to a customer, and now engineer is in trouble because they don't even know what they're talking about. And then there is also this idea of like a wider coverage of use cases. The second that I start to bringing all these different teams, then they start to realize, well, there's so much more that this agent could do. So we start actually exploring this idea of like, hey, if we start to do if we concentrate in building our own agents and our customer agents as well, in like just a select few, that actually becomes a bottleneck. And I think I'm seeing a lot of this out there now. I mean, I'm seeing like many of our customers now, they come to us saying, in the past 2 years ago, they would say, what should we do? What use cases are you seeing out there? Right now, everyone has like 100, 200, 800 use cases. Those are some of the numbers that I'm hearing. But the problem is that like, they say like, hey, my neck is on the line to deliver these use cases and I can maybe do 10 tops. Like, how can you help me? And we realized this through the process of building these agents internally as well, that it's a lot on the federating the building. So I want to go very quick because I'm almost out of time on like a few of the things that we learned along the process. So thing number one, building blocks. Make sure that you have like flywheels. So in our case, I was creating a repository of tools that are reusable, a repository of agents that are reusable for our own company. So every new use case that anyone can create, they're reusing those same building blocks. Number two, humans in the loop, for sure. But funny enough, we thought about all these ways that we can bring humans in the loop. What everyone in the company wanted, email. Just send an email, and I will answer that email as usual. So funny enough, we ended up just plugging in email. We had a bunch of metrics to know like people are actually engaging or not, but meeting customers where they are when you need them to do human in the loop is the best thing you can do. Thing number three that we learned is center of policies and control. Because now everyone's building agents in the company. We're like, well, we need to have a way to guarantee that they don't go astray in some ways. So I think like the zoom in metrics, everyone's kind of like already on board, things like traces in the vols. But we had to implement a lot of zoom out metrics, like, hey, how much consumption we have, how this is like separating across like all different providers and all that. And then yes, the regular traces and evaluations that kind of like everyone kind of like talks about. And then at this point is when like we felt ready to start federating the building. And then we're just like, all right, now everyone can go out there and building. We know how to track costs. We know how to see traces. We have policies. We remove PII. A bunch of tools already pre-built. We have MCPs that pull from our logs and all that. So it created a way for us to just start creating as many agents as we could and deploy them right away. But those are some of the learnings. So the way that we start to think about this now and the way that we even explain to our customers is there's almost like 3 different layers. There's this platform layer where you're talking about all this kind of like policies, the models, the data. There's a runtime layer, and that's where you care about things like horizontal scaling, vertical scaling, ability to actually execute those things, the human in the loop. And then there is the build layer that I would probably say that is is the one that you build the last, but it's the one that is most important. Because if you can actually do low floor, high ceiling, meaning anyone that is non-technical can build agents, but people that are technical can get extremely dangerous, then you really unlock something magical. So here's a few things. In the context of human in the loop, I think we have heard forever about this idea like, hey, humans are going to review outputs. There's going to be a few teams that are going to be kind of like gatekeeping these agents to make sure they're all good, they're all behaving. We're going to have runtime supervision. There's going to be a few people involved. That is not getting people into production. Or it is, but it's like real true bottleneck. The way that we're seeing like this actually get out there is this idea of like many humans are designing the systems. There is some sort of platform, and sometimes it's built internally, sometimes it's external, like enforcing rules. There is pooling these people and these experts during the design time, and the more people are participating, the better. But there's a few things that you got to do on that. So will humans be in the loop forever? As kind of like these agents become more autonomous, models getting better, eventually like we like see like some of these new models? Yes. But I think the loop itself is being redesigned. I think it's going to be humans in the loop, but not in the way that we're kind of like used to. So someone's going to kick me out of stage. Before I go, there's three things that if you have to remember, I would say are the most important things for this. One, I'm going to ask once again, how many of you now know about CrewAI? All right, that makes me feel so much better. One, the difference between companies that are succeeding for the ones that are not are they know what to build, so spend the time discovering what to build. With building getting easier, you get tempted into embrace too much. Make sure that you focus. Two, don't think about engineers as builders. Think about engineers as enablers, right? They build as much kind of like flywheels they can, the more you can do the number three. And that is turning as many humans into builders as you can. Thank you so much for today. I hope you have an amazing day, and I catch you around. Have a good one.